The impact was low speed and as much money as possible, as quickly as possible. Blood and body parts spread all over this. Very aggressive pros that used to circle the building. They were financially crazy stuff goes on along this river. I transformed from a shy, paralyzed student 20 years ago to the life that I enjoy today. The story of my success is largely written along the streets of downtown Calgary. Come walk with me and I'll tell you why and how it all happened and what I learned along the way. Well, initially it was very important for me to have role models of other people who were also disabled and successful to help me realize that success was still possible. I'm making this video to hopefully inspire others who are also facing similar challenges. I tipped my chair over here. I was tipped over, lying on my side, head out into oncoming traffic, cars whipping right by my head. Thankfully, one of the drivers saw me, stopped their vehicle in front of my head as a barricade, and came over and helped tip me upright. Almost dying really puts things in perspective. So why did I come and work for the oil and gas industry? As a young kid, I wanted to earn as much money as possible, as quickly as possible. After breaking my back and spending 7 months in rehab, I decided that I would rather die than go back to live in an institution. To ensure that I could live independently, I needed resources to pay people to help me. And I came to downtown Calgary to work for the energy industry because that's where all the money in Alberta was. Here's the second spot on 6th Avenue that I almost died. Right underneath that sign where it says Rio Bar and Grill, a car ran into me one dark and snowy winter morning as I was on my way to work. He was turning right onto 6th Avenue and just didn't see me. The impact was low speed and it only broke the front part of my wheelchair on the side, but it taught me an important lesson to never assume that people see you. So here we are at 605 5th Avenue, the location of my first real job. It was a co-op internship. Struggled so hard to get this first job. Other classmates of mine, they would interview once, twice, maybe 3 times to get an offer or multiple offers. Me, I would always get the interview because my grades were straight A's, had a really good transcript, had a really good resume, but I would never get an offer. People just weren't comfortable, weren't used to a guy in a wheelchair. They, oftentimes the employer would be there with their HR rep and they would be tongue-tied and taken aback when this guy in a wheelchair would come in for the interview. I interviewed maybe over 20 times, never getting an offer. Finally, this employer from Canadian Hunter and their accounting department, the accounting manager, came and interviewed students, and I actually got an offer from them. David Allen was the guy's name. Found out later from him that his daughter was physically disabled. So it didn't faze him to have this guy, this one-armed bandit, come into the interview room. It didn't faze him at all, and he saw me as just another human being. And so after this first job, on my resume, fairly well-respected employer that I did a reasonable job for, it was smooth sailing after that. The floor of the accounting department was on the very top floor of this tower. And when I showed up, I got the empty office, top floor, my own private office, window view to the Rocky Mountains. And every office I ever had since then was downhill. One day when we were working upstairs, a man had jumped off the top of our building and landed in this alleyway with his blood and body parts spread all over this pavement and walls. He decided to give up in a rather dramatic fashion. It's kind of cliche to say, don't give up, keep trying, but it's so true. Believe me, I also wanted to give up at certain times, especially after trying so hard unsuccessfully to get a job. I remember waiting for an interview one time and hearing through the thin office walls the hiring manager asking her HR rep if she really had to interview the guy in a wheelchair outside, saying she didn't want to hire someone like me, that I would just be a problem. Rather than remain demoralized after that, I chose to think practically and try and empathize with the hiring manager, because her point was, to a certain extent valid. I was different than all the other applicants. I was an unknown quantity. But I chose to think positively, be persistent, and always try and point out where I could add value. I think that was the key to my success. I couldn't help but stop here at Caesars. Many milestones, work and family-related milestones were celebrated here over the years. I even proposed to my ex-wife in this restaurant. A lot of water under the bridge. So here we are at the TransCanada Tower, or TC Energy now, where my second job was. Second internship, working in the market analysis department. Had a good work term, good experience. Had a job offer, but I decided to go to work for BP instead, which is where we're headed to next. I worked here initially in the BP M&A department, and I spent almost a decade here, transitioning to various roles every 1.5 to 2 years. It was a fantastic place to learn and grow. BP was massively supportive of me and my career over the years, allowing me to travel for work, first to London, and then as far away as Sakhalin Island, Russia. I really credit the company with opening my eyes to the world outside of Canada. The mentors I had at BP were immensely valuable and a key to my success over the years, with some mentors becoming lifelong friends to this day. Learning from mentors is so important. There used to be a strip club, kitty corner to BP Center there where that building is. There were many layoff rounds at BP, and it was a tradition for the fired employees to go over to the French Maid to commensurate. The place used to be pretty hairy. I remember working late several nights at BP and coming out, crossing the street, trying to get past all of the very aggressive pros that used to circle the building. Literally, they would chase you down the block. The place is so clean and nice now with that new office tower there. But boy, it has some stories to tell, that piece of land. After working for BP for almost a decade, I decided to take a new role, working for Talisman Energy down at Bankers Hall. Here we are at Bankers Hall, one of the most iconic towers in downtown Calgary. I worked here for Talisman Energy for about 3 years. Many of their former BP employees also came over to Talisman at about the same time. And unfortunately, I had a front row seat to watch a formerly nimble, successful, dynamic company be slowly suffocated by BP, big company process. I learned how overly bureaucratic processes are the enemy of progress and success. Despite having a good job as a finance team leader, I became bored and frustrated and decided to mix things up by taking a job on the other side of the world. So here we are in front of this building in Calgary, otherwise known as that. It's rather uncanny that this building right here and that building right over there, BP Center, represents the better part of 20 years for me. A former BP executive that I had worked for, taken a job as head of oil and gas for the in Abu Dhabi. And he was in town visiting for Stampede events and other meetings for the company here, and we connected for lunch. He convinced me at that lunch to come and work for him in Abu Dhabi. Maintaining a good contact network is so important for success in life. And that was a great example of that. I decided to take the risk and move over to Abu Dhabi to work for Dave. And as I was in the process of moving over there and arranging things to move over there, police clearances, etc., I was starting to work for the company temporarily in this office behind me. And I was showing the business plan for the company. And I realized immediately that they were financially I was committed. I decided, well, I've already quit my job at Talisman. I might as well dive into the deep end. So I ended up following through, taking the big risk, moving over there, and wondering, on the one-way flight to Abu Dhabi, I was wondering if I would even be able to unpack my suitcases before I was fired. As it turns out, almost immediately after I landed, my boss was fired. Many of my teammates were let go. And, I was thinking, what on earth? Somehow I was able to survive in the company for 7 years, progressing up to the VP level with responsibility for the company's budget, long-term business plan, and all economic evaluations for new project investments. My success would never have been possible if I had been too afraid to take that initial risk and move all the way over to Abu Dhabi. Take risks. Meaningful success in life almost never is possible without the courage to take risk. All right, let's head over to Eau Claire, to Joey's restaurant. You know how they say certain places are pivotal in changing the direction of your life? I was having lunch at that table out there on that veranda here at Joey's restaurant with the guy that hired me to go to work in Abu Dhabi. And that's where he convinced me to go. It didn't take much convincing, but yeah, that was a very pivotal lunch. If I had not connected with Dave for lunch that day, who knows if I would have ever gone over there. The course of my life would be completely different. Interesting to think about. I probably came on this river pathway more than 1,000 times over the years. To work, from work, to walk the dog, to go and meet friends, or just to clear my mind. It's a great thing to have a place where you can go just to clear your mind and mentally reset. It's even better if it's peaceful, somewhat away from people, close to nature. I love this river pathway along the Bow River in Calgary. Here's a spot where I spent many hours throwing the ball into the river for my dog to fetch out. Oh, I love this spot. A lot of good memories here. I've seen some unspeakable stuff go on along this river. I remember encountering something on the way to work one morning here that I would like to be able to wipe from my memory. Crazy stuff goes on along this river. During the craziness of 2020, I decided it was time for me to step away from corporate life. I had gathered enough money to live an independent, comfortable life, and I saw no reason to continue. The company I worked for was going through a merger, and I decided rather than taking the role that I was offered, that it was time for me to seek a new adventure. If you are interested in following some of my new adventures, I invite you to hit the subscribe button and watch for videos that I will be releasing on this channel from time to time. Thanks for listening.